Well, good afternoon. Such a pleasure to be here with you today. And thanks, George, for that very warm introduction. I'm glad to see so many friends here from the business community, so many of you whom I've had an opportunity, I think, to work with over the years. I really want to thank FICI, CII, ASSOCHAM, USIBC, the American Chamber, and the Indo-American Chamber, all of whom have been such strong partners in helping put this event together. But more importantly, the chambers have played such an important role, such a critical role in expanding markets, in enhancing opportunity, and in really bringing people together. In fact, it's a recognition of the innovation, the dynamism of the Indian private sector that increasingly we're seeing partnerships between Indian and American entrepreneurs that bring important benefits not only to India, but to the American people and, frankly, to the global community. And so it's indeed a pleasure to be here on my first visit as Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia, and to make my first public address in India here before this crowd. Now, I want to talk a little bit today about the opportunities that lie ahead as the trade and economic relationship between our two countries expands, matures, and becomes increasingly intertwined and interdependent in the decades to come. But first, let me set the scene a little bit. We have seen the emergence of a truly globalized world, brought closer together by technology and trade, and yet still contending with the challenges of conflict, environmental degradation, and poverty. Today, Asia represents more than half of the world's population and is the most dynamic and fastest growing economic region in the world. Currently, 3 of 4 largest economies in terms of purchasing power parity are in Asia. And by 2025, the region's trade volume is expected to double, led by China, India, and Indonesia. By most estimates, by 2050, Asia will comprise half of global GDP. Clouding this optimistic scenario are the challenges that loom in many Asian societies. Poverty, increasing inequality, competition over scarce resources, the effects of climate change, inadequate investment in human capital, underdeveloped infrastructure, weak governance, and fragile institutions that continue to be plagued by corruption. But nowhere are the opportunities more compelling and the challenges more clear than in India. In the Indian context, however, those challenges are very surmountable. As businessmen and women doing deals across the continent, I know you understand this. And the United States gets this. More importantly, my bosses, President Obama and Secretary Kerry, get this. The Asia rebalance that President Obama articulated before the Australian Parliament a couple of years ago fundamentally is a recognition that this continent will play a leading role in global politics, security, and economics in the 21st century. And there is no question that India's economic success is vital to achieving the strategic aims that our leaders have laid out. In order for the region to live up to its potential, it must create societies that encourage strong and inclusive economic growth, one where the private sector and not government leads economic development. It must quell terrorism and counter violent extremism while at the same time advancing human dignity and human rights. But let me say this, an Asia that boasts democratic governance, transparency, and free market economics will offer 4.3 billion people the best opportunity to pursue happiness and realize their aspirations. And in order for this to happen, in order for all of Asia's citizens to truly reap the benefits of economic prosperity, countries in the region have to work across boundaries. The United States is very interested in supporting that vision and in supporting India's economic connections, both west into Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Central Asia, and east with Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Southeast Asia. We fundamentally believe that greater economic connectivity will boost regional stability and prosperity. It'll create new markets and new opportunities, and most of all, it will create new incentives for peace. That's good for the Indian economy and for the Indian people. And let me be candid, it's also good for the American economy and for the American people. And on that front, we see two major regional initiatives taking shape. First, there's the historic opportunity to connect South and Southeast Asia into an integrated economic landscape. This this Indo-Pacific Economic Corridor, or IPEC, is a unique geography, a place where the United States and India's security, political, and economic imperatives converge. It supports both the American rebalance towards Asia and India's Look East policy that has been the subject of trilateral discussions between the United States, India, and Japan. In fact, I would say that the policy has moved beyond Look East to Be East, and that is a welcome development. In Myanmar, where Prime Minister Singh just concluded his second visit in 3 years, we are seeing the benefits of a political transition play out with foreign investment more than quadrupling since President Thein Sein's political reforms initiated in 2011. Bangladesh stands to develop tremendous commercial ties with the rest of Asia through its very strategic location and wealth of natural resources. But it is India's efforts today to create durable land, sea, and air links into Southeast Asia that will shape the movement of goods and services tomorrow. And more broadly, we welcome India's growing economic and strategic influence with the economies of ASEAN. Having cultivated a close bond, very much like our own with the 10-nation bloc, India and ASEAN account for 1.8 billion people and $3.8 trillion in GDP, with an impressive 40% increase in trade in 2012 alone. We think Prime Minister Singh had it right when he said the resurgence of Asia is dependent on cooperative architectures in which all countries are equal participants. For IPEC to succeed, India will have to work with its neighbors and international partners on developing transportation and energy infrastructure, reducing the time and cost of moving goods, raising financing, and finding regional institutions that can support these efforts. The other major area of regional integration is as you look west, with the upcoming political, security, and economic transition in Afghanistan. There is a strategic imperative to connect the economies of South Asia and Central Asia. But how do you do this in a region that is fraught with complexity and historical distrust? Well, you do it like it has been done in the days of old. You talk and you trade. Through the New Silk Road Initiative, we have been focusing our efforts in 4 key areas: creating regional energy markets that link Central Asia with South Asia, promoting trade and transportation routes and investing in critical infrastructure, improving customs and borders, and linking businesses and people. Today, Afghanistan and its neighbors are increasingly championing and owning that new Silk Road vision, creating new north-south transit and trade routes that complement the very vibrant east-west connections across Eurasia. And the region is making concrete efforts to reduce barriers to trade, to invest in each other's economies, and to support international development and cross-border projects. But let me caveat that the regional connectivity through Afghanistan is very difficult, and barriers to trade still remain high. However, we are starting to see some breakthroughs. For the first time, regional energy projects, such as Casa 1000, which will bring surplus hydropower from Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan to Afghanistan and Pakistan, is making very real progress with international financing largely in place and with broad support in all 4 CASA countries. Discussions are underway on a separate electricity line that would bring additional energy from Central Asia into Afghanistan and Pakistan. And eventually, we hope to see Central Asian energy flow into the Indian markets through TAPI, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India pipeline. Barriers to trade are also slowly coming down. With US technical assistance, custom procedures have been streamlined from 20+ steps to 12 at many Afghan border crossings, resulting in expedited trade with an average release time that has been reduced from 8 days in 2009 to just 3.5 hours in 2013. The United States has also been hosting trade forums that have brought together Indian, Pakistani, Afghan, and Central Asian businesses, where real deals have been signed on the spot, creating new markets and new opportunities. In the coming years, the most important step that India can take in promoting greater connectivity to its west is to normalize trade with Pakistan. And while there has been tremendous progress and political courage and leadership exhibited over the past few years, bilateral trade is still little over $2.5 billion in 2013. We believe that with continued effort on both sides, that could easily grow to $10 billion. And that's not just our thinking. That's the number that industry groups in both countries have put forward. Pakistan can play a critical role by granting non-discriminatory market access to India. And India can reduce non-tariff barriers to increase trade between the 2 countries. Put simply, in a region of enormous consequence, India has enormous opportunities for trade integration. Blessed by the Arabian Sea on one side, the Bay of Bengal on the other, astride the busiest sea lanes in the world, and I think you'd agree, one of the most entrepreneurial societies in the world, India has tremendous possibilities. Even more impressive are India's demographics. With a median age of 23 and 600 million people under the age of 25, India's consumer class expected to double to 575 million by 2025. If India can help nurture the talents of its people, provide them with productive outlets, then India will benefit greatly from that youth boom. And we are betting that by 2030, India can and will grow to be the 3rd largest economy in the world in terms of nominal GDP and not just PPP. Some predict that India could be the largest economy in the world by 2050. For it to realize that vision, these tremendous assets will need to be matched by addressing some significant needs. India is improving its energy and its infrastructure. It is modernizing its agriculture, and it is developing health solutions. providing higher education and skills to a broader population. Businesses are driving much of this progress, and yet India still ranks poorly amongst all countries as a hospitable place to invest and start a new business, ranked 134 out of 189 countries. If India's enviable demographic boom is to be harnessed, India must take an unprecedented commitment to develop skill and knowledge across all sectors of its economy. But remember this, there is no challenge that India cannot overcome. And when our two countries work together, there is no challenge that we cannot tackle more efficiently and more effectively. First and foremost, we need to keep focused on growing the trade and investment ties between our two countries. The United States is committed to this. If we are to quintuple our current significant trade, which is at $100 billion, to $500 billion over the next 10 years, which is what Vice President Joe Biden challenged us to do during his visit last summer, then international firms need to believe that the benefits far exceed the costs and the challenges, and that India remains committed to economic growth. One of the most significant endeavors in world economic affairs since the Second World War has been the creation of a rules-based trading system that has sought to increase commerce, connectivity, and prosperity across the globe. Most of you in the audience here today would agree that the more integrated India is into global markets and in the key economic architecture of Asia, the more India's economy will grow and benefit the entire global economic system. And India has come a very long way. Import tariffs on average are more than 30 times lower than they were in 1991, when then Finance Minister Manmohan Singh kicked off the modern reforms. Like any trading partner, we do have our differences. And I know there has been some focused attention to that in the press lately. But the willingness to talk about them indicates that we are indeed confident, mature partners. We are concerned that domestic content requirements here are discouraging investment into India, inhibiting innovation, and holding India back from developing into the world-class manufacturing sector that it needs to be in order to compete and generate jobs for millions of Indian youth that are entering the job market. And equally important is the need for transparency in India's tax policies, timely regulatory approvals and contract enforcement, and a commitment to strengthening the protection of intellectual property. We're addressing these concerns head-on, as good partners do, either bilaterally through our long-established dialogues or through multilateral mechanisms. Again, the solution here is to talk and to trade. There's no question that India's economic success is vital to achieving the strategic aims that both our leaders have laid out. And our ongoing discussions about the bilateral investment treaty, when completed, will bring even greater investment and innovation to India and stronger partnerships between our two private sectors. We are each making progress to remove impediments to commerce. And from India's recently announced Visa on Arrival program to our own partnership on the US Global Entry Program, we are enhancing the way real-time business will be conducted between our two nations. Nowhere is the US-India collaboration more important than on addressing global environmental challenges. We have sought common ground on climate change issues, both through multilateral discussions and through bilateral cooperation in forestry, adaptation, clean and renewable energy and on HFCs through the creation of the Climate Change Working Group. As broad as our engagement on global issues is, we can expand it, and we will even further, to engage on other critical cross-cutting issues, such as preserving our oceans. We are actively working together to mitigate the causes of climate change through our energy and science and technology cooperation. Our nations are together improving the prediction of weather and monsoon forecasting, saving both lives and money. US and Indian scientists, entrepreneurs, and government officials will gather next week in Delhi for the next energy dialogue, which will be led on the US side by our Secretary of Energy, Moniz. From clean technology to non-renewables, energy efficiency to nuclear energy, these ideas and programs will benefit consumers and businesses in both countries. And don't forget, our cities and states are partnering more extensively than ever before, embodying the very essence of our broad strategic partnership. States like California and Maharashtra are sharing ideas on how to improve fuel quality for India's fast-growing vehicle fleets, which we hope will lead the way to improved health of urban inhabitants and contribute important climate benefits as well. And what is the foundation that enables and propels this cooperation? Knowledge and education. President Obama and Prime Minister Singh's 21st Century Knowledge Initiative has seen our governments give $10 million to projects that will strengthen collaboration and build partnerships between American and Indian institutions of higher education. Yet we want more Indian students taking advantage of top universities in the United States. And we're keen to send more American students to India. So in closing, we want to work with India, trade with India, invest in India, innovate with India, and grow with India. To take what 3 successive presidents and 2 prime ministers, 15 years, and our 1.6 billion citizens have created, and to make it even better. I take that responsibility very seriously and very personally. And I assure you, we're committed to cooperation and ambition in our ties with India. So thank you very much for being here today, and I would love to continue the conversation as more of a dialogue and hear from you on any thoughts and questions that you have on how we can expand and extend cooperation between our 2 countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much for some very thought-provoking ideas. I'm sure there are several people in the audience who would like to take you up on your request for some questions. I think we have microphones on each side. So if there's, I think we have one here in the front.
Madam Assistant Secretary Pratyush Kumar from Boeing.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
It's good to see you again.
Very good to hear your commitment to bilateral trade. And I read with keen interest your op-ed as well, in which you mentioned the quintupling of the bilateral trade between India and US. When Vice President Biden was here last July, he talked about potentially quintupling that once again. However, given the list that you went through in terms of trade disagreements between the 2 countries, how do you see that potential?
Well, you know, I think we're very bullish on the potential of the relationship, not only because of India's demographics, India's location, all of the various assets that I enumerated in my remarks, but also because, quite frankly, there's so much synergy and convergence that there's a natural desire to partner with and invest in India. We do have challenges, and I want to put those challenges into context because I think that India has made much progress. There's more that needs to be done. The United States has traveled its own journey, and we've gone through our own experiences of liberalizing and opening up our own economy. And we've seen the very real benefits that it has produced for our economy. So I'm sure that we will continue to work through the areas of difference or divergence, and that we will continue to be incentivized by the very real potential and the very real benefits to both of our societies and to both of our peoples. Thank you. I'm long overdue to visit Orissa. This was a preface to a hard question. I get it. Okay.
But please get to the question if you don't mind. We have limited time. Can you please get to the question? We have limited time.
Look, I think that we need to have a very real conversation between government and industry. There are a number of different issues that need to be sorted out and worked through. There are issues with respect to compulsory licenses, and there's probably a lot of speculation that doesn't help the situation. I understand that India has issued one compulsory license, but there's a lot of anxiety about what additional licensors are being considered. And so I think that that's an area that we ought to have a real transparent conversation. There's also concern about next generation drugs and whether those next generation drugs would be protected. And how do you ensure that investments that are being made to develop ever more effective drugs can then be continue to be protected? And I think that those are, again, questions that need to be addressed. There's obviously a lot that has been done with respect to trying to find ways to address some of the very real health needs that India and other emerging economies have manifested in terms of drug pricing. And I think that there's been increasing receptivity amongst the pharmaceutical industry to look at options like tier pricing to help address some of those questions. So there are challenges and there are solutions. And I think, again, that the issue here is to bring together industry and government and work together and find those solutions. And I want to commend your ambassador in Washington, Ambassador Jaishankar, for convening just one such of a gathering. And I know he hosted a meeting with a number of pharmaceutical companies to be able to understand and hear their concerns and to be able to explain and express Indian concerns. And I think that those are all very, very positive things. And I would simply encourage more opportunities to sort through those issues.
Ambassador Suren Kumar, founding president of Indo-American Friends Association, former consul of India in Chicago.
Wonderful.
I must compliment you for article in terms of India, very balanced, objective. I have one observation, one question. We keep on reading a lot about in the US press how many jobs are going to Bangalore. But we don't read much about how many jobs have been created in the US. You refer to our friend Jai Shankar. Recently, I think he delivered a lecture and we said defense contract one in last 4 or 5 years, totaling to US dollar 9 billion. They themselves will create something like 40,000 jobs in US. IT companies, according to CII report, have invested about $18 billion in US and have created 400,000 jobs. So Indian people don't get to read a lot of what Indian company investment is going in US. My question is related to regional connectivity. You said South Asia can connect to South Asia, and then South Asia connect to Central Asia. In this context, recently you might have read Chinese proposal for maritime Silk Route. Do you have any comment on that? Thank you.
Well, I have to confess on your second question that I don't have enough information on the Chinese initiative, and so I look forward to reading more about that. But let me say first that I think you make a very valid point that in both countries we need to do a better job of articulating the importance and the benefits to both of our societies of the bilateral trade and investment. And it is two-way trade and it is two-way investment. And I think Indian companies are investing something in the neighborhood of $25 billion in the US economy. And that's a very important investment and one that we welcome and one that we would like to see grow and expand. And similarly, we want to see more US investment in the Indian economy. And there are very real, tangible benefits to both of our societies. I also think that you are fair to criticize us in sometimes not engaging enough in the people-to-people side to invest our societies in that vision of this relationship and this partnership by explaining these issues in more clear and compelling ways. I will take that on myself personally in terms of not only giving speeches here, but also back in the United States that again lay out this vision in more clear and compelling ways. So thank you.
So if the questions are kept short, we have time for two more. I thought there was a young lady in the back.
And I'm giving long-winded answers, so I apologize.
Hello, I'm Annapurna Vanteshwaran from the Energy and Resources Institute.
Hi.
Nishaji, you make us all proud.
Oh, thank you.
And what I wanted to inform you was that I had the pleasure and the privilege of meeting you at the US-India Energy Partnership Summit, which is a Track 2 initiative which Terry takes on, and we were there. You were there with us in September last.
Yes, yes.
And I have actually forwarded the proceedings of the summit which came out, and I quote what you had mentioned there, that bringing electricity and clean forms of energy to the 1/3 of Indians currently deprived is a monumental imperative in India. My quick question is, because we had a fantastic discussion with you and with other colleagues, at that time you were in USAID, but with your new portfolio, will this imperative become an impetus? Because as you mentioned, that the demographic of India currently is the challenge as well as an advantage for the globe. And if it can become an impetus for rural connectivity, in addition to the regional connectivity, that is the win-win situation for everyone, India and the US and the globe. So
well, thanks, Annapurna. It's really good to see you here. You know, I think it already is an impetus. I think that there is so much tremendous activity between Indian innovators and US innovators, Indian scientists and US scientists, and Indian and US private sector in one, pioneering and developing clean energy solutions, particularly in the off-grid and microgrid space, and looking for opportunities to bring these to scale and opportunities to make them marketable and sustainable. There are certainly challenges on financing, challenges on scaling and sustaining these enterprises. But I think we're looking at new ways of trying to do that. And there's so much effort that's going into this space. And I was really pleased to be able to highlight some of the work that we're doing when I was in Bangalore a couple of days ago with Orb Energy and with the Selco Foundation. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's just so many different efforts that we're supporting or catalyzing or showcasing in different ways that I'm very optimistic that India is actually going to help pave the way in creating that clean energy access um, vision, not only here in India, but frankly, helping to transmit and transfer that to other parts of the globe. So thank you.
I think this gentleman's been waiting for a long time. This will be our last question.
Thank you. My name is Nalin Kohli. I want to give you some inputs on the small and medium enterprises on both the sides. As the former co-chair of the CI National MSME Council and the Defense SME Committee chair, we have taken a lot of initiatives and taken delegations to the US and hosted delegations from the US. We feel that we only scratch the surface as far as SMEs are concerned, particularly in the knowledge industries like IT, biotech, clean technologies, and defense. We also feel that unless we widen this whole scope of uh, industry government dialogue by including some SMEs on both the sides, we are actually these are the guys who have a lot more opportunities and much less challenges. What's happening is you have some big companies on both the sides who have already exploited the opportunities, but they talk about challenges. And I'm talking about hundreds of small companies who have a strategic fit with their US counterparts. And we somehow are not able to engage properly. Mm-hmm. On the Indian side, there is a federal ministry for small and medium enterprises. On the US side, it is actually done more at the state and the county level. So my request is if we can have an institutional mechanism by which we can engage much more at the SME level. Mm-hmm. The second thought, which I would like to share with you, we actually took some of our SME companies who invested in the US.
We're very tight on time. Shall we let her answer your first question?
I think there's a huge scope on Indian small, medium companies investing and turning around small, medium enterprises, the Chapter 11 enterprises in the US. And we need some investor program which facilitates that. Right now, there isn't.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I'd be happy to take on board both of your recommendations and explore and see what we can do. I mean, I know that there have been different fora in which we've sought to engage SMEs, particularly as we've looked at kind of ways to seed and finance and scale different social businesses that can have enormous impact in addressing some of the gaps, development gaps that we see in India and in other parts of the world, because we think that the private sector and certainly SMEs are a huge component of this, can drive those solutions. But I take your point that in the broader business dialogue, in the broader trade dialogue, to be able to factor in some of the particular interests and challenges faced by the SME sector. And so I think that that's something that I'm happy to take back and explore and see what we can do. I do want to just again underscore that there is such an enormous and vibrant private sector here in India. I mean, the opportunities that I had to look at and work with so many Indian entrepreneurs in my previous job when I was at USAID really brings me to my conviction that what our two countries can do together to address key challenges, not only in our own countries, but key challenges around the globe, that what we can do together is far, far greater than what we can do alone. And that guides us and that compels us to push forward, address whatever challenges may come, but keep a firm eye on the vision that we see unfolding, and one that inspires us. So thank you very much for allowing me to share some of those thoughts with you. And I look forward to working with you and engaging with you in the years to come. Thank you.